Remember what I never forgot. And I never felt guilty about the trouble that we got into. Just couldn't.
Everyone, thanks for jumping in on the call. As per usual, we'll play some tunes and we'll give it a couple of minutes before we get started. Probably start maybe 2 or 3 minutes time once everyone's joined us. Sit back, grab a beer, relax, and we'll chat to you shortly. Now, if you're not familiar with using Zoom and this is your first time, I'll give you a quick little hack job way to get around. In the bottom of your screen, you'll see something that says chat. You'll also see something that says Q&A. Chat is where you just put random nonsense stuff that you want to let us know about. It could be commenting on how beautiful we look today. It could be anything or anything that you feel like. So feel free to jump in there and say hi. You can select to send that to all panelists, or you can send it to panelists and attendees as well. And then there's the question and answer, Q&A section. That spot is for you to throw in any of your questions. Feel free to ask anything that you want. Ideally, keep it to around COVID and hospitality businesses, because that's what we're talking about today. But we'll go through the Q&A. If something pops up, you want to double check something, we'll keep an eye on that. What we'll try to do is try to create an open conversation towards the end of the webinar where we can go through those particular questions for you, and we'll cover it off then. But we might stop halfway through if you've got a real corporate question. All right, guys, we'll give it another minute and we'll get started. All right, everybody. Hello, thank you, and welcome joining us today this afternoon. We've got a lovely group of humans joining us to talk all about the world of Hospo. Melissa, Brendan, Sam, Jason, feel free to chuck your cameras on, unmute yourself, and wave at the screen to let everyone know how beautiful you all look. Yes, excellent. We've got it. Welcome, guys. How are we all doing?
Great.
Very good. All good. Thank you.
Lovely. Now, before we get started, for those that are on the call watching this will be recorded. So if you have any questions and you missed something, you want to watch it again, or you thought, this was just so fucking amazing, I need to share it with all my friends, you'll be able to do so after all this as well. I just quickly, as a way of introduction, the people that we're staring at on the screen, my cell phone, let me just share this and you can see a bit of the stuff we've got here. So obviously there is myself, Andrew from Illuminate. I am an accountant, don't hold that against me, and passionate about working with people who want more than just profit in their business, but a bit of purpose and a bit of stuff and doing some cool and funky stuff. So that's who I am. We're joined by Sam Keck from Commonfolk Coffee and Drops of Juniper Gin. Sam is very well known in the industry around not just Mornington, but also in the worldwide coffee culture space as well. So we got our mate Sam. We've got Melissa Goffing from Red Gum BBQ. Thanks for joining us, Mel. Melissa's created an incredible experience in Red Gum, something that is just unrivaled in the country in terms of barbecue. So it's great to have her on board and sharing some of her thoughts and ideas. We've got our mate Jason. Jason is pretty much an old warhorse in terms of the hospitality industry. He started his first hospitality business many years ago, has gone through a heap. One of the things he does at the moment is he's part owner of the Final Step coffee shop here, which is in South Yarra. He's also Wolf of the Willows Brewery and a couple of wineries as well, because he's got heaps of time to deal with that. And our last amazing human we've got on the call is Brendan from Phase 2 in Balnarring. Brendan's probably the youngest in the world of hospitality on the call here. And he's been doing some really cool stuff down in Balnarring as well. So these are the guys that are going to be joining us. I'm going to give a real quick 5-second spiel on COVID and stuff like that, because, hey, that's what time it is right now. If you have enrolled for JobKeeper and you have not received payments, it might be because you haven't done it correctly. Those payments should have hit your bank account by now, unless the ATO is being nasty and holding it back. I recommend you get in touch with your accountant and your bookkeeper immediately. If you have not enrolled, you have like 3 days to do so, or you lose out for the month of April and May. Depending on how many employees you have, that could be thousands of dollars. I highly recommend you do that. The second one, and this is one we're seeing as well, there is a Victorian Business Support Fund grant. This is a $10,000 grant that is going towards businesses that have been impacted by COVID. They need to employ people, and they need to have not be paying over $650,000 in wage and be eligible for JobKeeper. If you have not applied for that, you need to apply for that soon. In 3 days, it closes and you will not be able to apply for that again. That is in Victoria. If you're in another state, there are various different state-based ones. I believe Queensland's one is done, kaputzi, and finished. So those are the two things I really wanted to kind of give you a quick bit of a highlight. What we're going to cover today is just an open conversation around, obviously on Monday, all the rules change for hospitality businesses. But what does that mean? And is that something that we should be taking advantage of? Should we be wary? And I'm keen to hear what the guys here have in terms of their opinions on how they're going to face that too in their different scale business as well. So now that I've done that spiel, we're just going to jump straight into it. I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. The guys are going to have a good old chat, and we'll go from there. Now, one question I want to ask everybody on this panel, just to warm you up a little bit before we get into it. Melissa, tell me, what's one thing that you're really glad that we've been in isolation and COVID for, so that no one would see you doing it?
I don't know that I understand the question. Sorry.
So you've been in isolation, you've been doing something around home, and you're just glad that you're doing it at home and not in public, because it's probably something you wouldn't want people to see.
Oh, so I mean, probably like everyone, I've gotten really comfortable with leisure wear in a way that I hadn't previously. So like bringing out like old tracksuit pants and wearing them around the house, which I would generally not do, but very comfortable and happy.
So I'm looking forward to the new Red Gum official staff uniform, tracksuit
leisure
pants,
wear merch
shirts.
Is on its way.
Love it. Sam, give me a spiel, mate. What about you? What have you been doing that you're just glad no one knows?
Well, I wish I could say that it was wearing tracksuit pants, but we actually have an official Commonfolk 2-piece tracksuit available for purchase, so I probably won't go there. I guess it's on display for everyone to see, but I decided to be really unique along with every other 30-something hipster foodie and start my own sourdough culture and dyeing my hair blonde.
Excellent.
So, yeah. That's pretty much it, but it's on display. My shame is very public.
Oh, very good. Very good. Brendo, mate, what about you, mate? What have you been doing that's a bit weird and wacky over the last few months?
I achieved a little project. I built a chicken coop. So I've got 2 chooks now. Happy hens laying eggs.
Lovely. Cutting the overhead costs and the cost of production in phase 2, like an egg at a time.
Yeah, that'd be free range. I'll have 1,000 soon.
And Jason, mate, what about yourself?
Look, I hate to admit it, but I've been doing some late nights working, and I've drank canned coffee.
Ooh.
Oh, no.
Oh, this is you're a guy that owns a cafe and you're drinking canned.
I know.
I don't even drink coffee, and I know that I probably shouldn't go near that stuff.
I've got an AeroPress, cold drip, cold brew system, and then every now and then I feel like a milky coffee. I'm like, that's just, yeah.
That's okay. No judgment here. No judgment at all.
All these judgments.
I won't share what I've done because I've been perfectly well behaved and I haven't been drinking all the beer and all the whiskey and all the wine that I could possibly find in the house and having to pretty much max out my credit cards on it. That's fine. It's not me. So let's get right into it. What I'd love to kind of start with right now is there is a point in time when Scott Morrison, Dan Andrews came out and said, hey, hospitality businesses, as of tomorrow, you can't operate the way you've always operated. Sam, I'm going to start with you. When you heard that news, what was your first reaction? And then what did you do straight away to start to deal with that?
It was shit. What am I going to do? I think we were not so much shocked because I think that anyone saw it coming that we're going to have to shut things down. We scrambled to figure out exactly what that meant for us. Could we keep doing takeaway? Were we going to be able to keep roasting and distributing coffee? Because we're not just in hospitality, but also in food manufacture and retail. And so for us, it was a matter of trying to identify what areas of our business we could continue to do and then figure out how many people we'd need to do that. Because, of course, this was all before JobKeeper and any sort of incentive or government stimulus. And so that was probably the first few days. That and then I think communicating with our customers as to what their plans were in terms of people coming into the cafe, but then also people purchasing wholesale coffee from us. Are you going to need an order? What are you thinking about, doing for your own business? Are you going to shut? Are you going to try and trade? So it was a bit of a mad rush, but in the end, we decided to keep trading takeaway and keep roasting coffee, but adding to our bow home delivery to our retail customers and continuing to support the wholesale customers that we had who wanted to do similar things to us.
Cool. Jace, you have the smallest kind of cafe out of all where you can fit about half a person inside, but you crank out a significant amount of coffee still every week. For you guys, what was that like? Did much change?
Look, we were in an interesting situation. Aside from obviously not allowing people to dine in, we actually expected change, but probably not in the way we got it. We actually gained, we increased sales during the weekday. Being in South Yarra, I think, or anywhere, people are at home and they're bored. They might be working or whatever, but, so we've ended up new customers who you'd see on the weekends all of a sudden coming down for 2 coffees. So that was certainly a unique situation. I think the same as everyone. I think the people on their laptops were missing a space to work from, which they're going to for a little while now. But for us, it was a unique situation, and we stopped doing bagels, which we had, just to sort of ease some of that handling. But other than that, it's been good from a community perspective.
Interesting. So Jace is obviously the final steps. There's a lot of kind of residential. People can easily walk to it. Melissa, it's not easy to walk to Red Gum BBQ. A lot of people who've come to Red Gum for the first time struggle to find it because it's this beautiful little hidden spot. For you guys, I'm assuming it would have been different. What was it like when you first realized that tomorrow everything was dramatically changing?
Well, we had been obviously, like everybody else, kind of watching the dramatic change happen really dramatically or intensely for at least a week. So I think that we weren't surprised when the final axe came down, and there was actually an enormous sense of relief, I think, from us to kind of stop running around in that way and run around in a different way. But our decision was really immediately, and it almost required no thought, actually, was that we needed to just stop. We felt like we'd been just kind of the victim of all of these policies and changes for what felt like so long and so intensely that, and our wage costs are so enormous and they run in arrears. So we thought, oh my gosh, if we're not trading right now, like we still have full weeks of pays to go through in a week and 2 weeks time. And I think we were just really worried about continuing to hemorrhage and what that might be like, and takeaway being a really unknown entity for us and untested. It felt really risky to progress at all. So we just stopped. And that was the right decision for us.
I think there was a lot of that. Speaking to people being in hospitality or even other industries, or even my team internally, like the grey is a really crappy place to be in. Just give me black or white. Am I shut or am I not? If I know that I'm shut, then great, I can actually action something. But if we're constantly changing the barriers and where things are, we're trying to write policies and procedures, and half of it you're throwing out the next week going, well, that has to change.
And that's what we've been doing, right? Like so intensely changing policy, rewriting things, implementing things. There was no way to know that it wasn't going to change again in a few days' time. So
yeah. Brendan, you've got a few family that kind of run your space. So yourself and your partner, and then a couple other kind of family there as well. So you got quite an intense group. Was it the four of you kind of bunking down that day one and went, all right, what are we doing? How did you approach that, working with your team and being that you've got a lot of close people working with you?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. Obviously, it was a bit of an emotional journey, but a pretty quick journey. It was, I think it was anger initially. Angry at the world, angry at the virus, what have you, and then there's a little bit of fear that creeps in. Shit, we've got this due, we've got this outstanding, and then this is all in the space of half an hour where the four of us are together. The brain's trust of sorts. And then, you've got to accept it. Accept this is what it is. Shit, what are we going to do? How do we do it? And we need to do it now. The thing that put us in good shape was we took action immediately. And it was noticeable action. Our customers noticed it. Anyone walking past would observe our changes that we implemented there, from the configuration of the cafe to hygiene measures and what have you. So, and then what do we do going forward? How long will this stick around? We've introduced Friday night pop-ups, which we'd never traded on an evening before, and they've been a great success for us. We did Mother's Day hampers, which we hadn't done before. We hadn't packaged anything together. We got a takeaway liquor license, we didn't think was possible. So we just, obviously helpful having a team of four to be able to think on the run. But early on it was an emotional journey, and here we are. I think it's 11 weeks in, and we've embraced that change, adopted it, and we're happy, don't mind me saying, we're enjoying it a little bit, and now it's changing again.
Well, if you're up for the fight, you're up for a challenge. I think there's a lot of things that I've been seeing people been learning about change in the last kind of 2 to 3 months, and these are maybe potentially people who don't like change originally and now realizing that change, they can actually manage it really well. And there's potentially a lot of stuff that we've learned that we might actually maintain now. All of a sudden we've learned that, hey, maybe a night kind of thing can be well, maybe a home delivery something, maybe deciding to make immediate action is really valuable. I've seen that with a number of clients in that the people who just got straight into it, okay, cool, all right, we got to make action and we got to deal with it now, as opposed to the ones who just sat back and said, oh, we'll just wait. They were the ones who, they might have made a bigger knee-jerk reaction immediately, but we saw it went from here all of a sudden to here straight away, and they were potentially in a position to deal with it faster than others who weren't thinking about it. And look, it's a challenge. Hopefully we never have to face this again. But at the same time, there are things that we've done that hopefully we'll continue doing. Mel, so for you guys, I know when you shut down, you sold off all your amazing meat, which I was shattered because I didn't get to jump in and get some of the meat, because I know the meat you guys have that you get in is just the best quality around. What have you done since those days? Actually, sorry, and before I go to this question, I will note Brendan is wearing a Red Gum hat, a Commonfolk jumper. He's drinking Wolf of the Willows beer, which is from Jason. And he's got a really rad beanie lying around there somewhere too, I think. So
love it.
What a guy. What a guy. He's definitely on brand.
Hashtag
support each other.
Okay.
So Mel, so obviously we had this massive change. Everything kind of happened. The door's shut. How did you guys deal with that? Because you have put a lot of yourself into this business. And I know that for me, it's been an incredibly emotional time personally, but I've been working 20-hour days, 7 days a week because I've had a shit ton of work to do, and I still can be doing what I do. You effectively told everything you've sown into this business for the last few years you can't do right now. How did you manage that, if you don't mind, internally and as a team?
And I just at the same time as you were chatting, saw that one of the somebody wrote on a question about like there's a grief cycle, and I guess like that's what I would say as well, that like and we're no different, right? Like yes, we put our heart and soul into this business, but everybody here has, and everybody out there does. Like a small business owner that you start yourself, like it just takes every ounce of your being to live and breathe it. It was so devastating because I guess that moment of closing our doors was so unknown. And, you know, I can remember those the last shift and the closing of the gates and what that looked like and felt like. And it was heart wrenching because, you know, at that point, like we had no clarity on what this length of process was going to be, whether or not, you know, in with every best intention to reopen our doors, whether or not that would be a reality, and what that road to get there might be. And I think what was really surprising to me was that I imagined going home and wearing lots of leisure wear and, you know, spending quality time with the kids and all of that. And the reality was that winding down our business was an enormous job. And then trying to understand JobKeeper and all of the information coming out from the government about businesses, like, was really exhausting. And we were at it. I was at it at home all day, almost every day, with kind of breaks to get away from it. But the period was really, really hard. And at the same time, kind of, you know, wanting to stay connected to people on socials or, you know, continue to speak to our community, but also finding that really difficult. Like, what are we going to say? I just felt like, you know, contributing to the conversation in a not a meaningless way, but in a sort of flippant way about like, are you missing your barbecue? Just felt, you know, like not really aware of what everybody was experiencing. So I got quiet for a while and our socials got quiet for a while in the absence of knowing what to say and how to say it. We did start up an ISOQ thing where we were, Martin was really wanting to smoke at home, and we got a loaner barbecue, and then went and did some sort of tutorial sessions, put them up on YouTube on our channel, and delivered the food to local families in need. So got people to provide us names and things. So got to kind of have these little bits of sort of fun and feeling like we were giving back a bit as well. So that was nice. But yeah, it was a messy, hard time, really. It continues to be messy and hard.
Yeah, and I can imagine when you've got momentum and when things are, you know, I've seen a number of things were finally clicking, or things you've been working on for a year and now are now out there, and all of a sudden you've got to hit the brakes. And the language I've been trying to use with clients is it's a pause button, not a stop button. You've done the work, you're at a point. It's not like you have to go and start it again. So what are you doing to maintain just that? And I think with all the people on this call, you've got a strong community of people that support your businesses. And I think that's the highlight of a good hospitality business in particular, is you have a really strong community. The plumber doesn't have that same kind of community. He might have a great business and might be helping people, but it's not like I go to the plumber and have a great experience. I want to go and have some good meat, or have a good, well, I don't drink coffee, but have a good coffee, or those kind of things. I want that experience. So if you guys have an enormous community of people that are missing that, and you do play a massive part in our mental well-being in society, because you provide an ability for people to come out and enjoy themselves and interact with others where they otherwise wouldn't be able to do so. Jace, you are an accountant turned social worker turned hospitality person turned blah, 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 blah. Yep. Social work. So you consult a number of hospitality businesses as well, and you've had many a conversation with me. We've talked about the grief aspect. We've talked about the ability to make a decision and how you go about that. What have you seen personally in the businesses that you're involved in, but with some of the others, some good and some of the bad approaches to making some of these decisions when all of a sudden we got told that, sorry, you need to close your doors, or something has to massively change?
Yeah, look, I think certainly during that initial phase, look, it was difficult. As business owners, you were trying to get your head around JobKeeper, you were trying to get your head around all the changes. And I think where some businesses struggled a bit, they forgot about their staff. And I think we introduced a COVID-free speak zone in the final step, because what was happening is every single day you'd had, almost every customer was talking about it. And so our staff were getting bombarded by, oh, are you going to get JobKeeper? Are you going to still be open tomorrow? When we didn't know either. And so, just for the mental health of our staff, we really just said, look, come in, have a coffee, but this is just a space to talk about something that isn't COVID related. And that was more for the mental health of our staff rather than, well, actually it wasn't about customers. It was about really looking after the staff and not having to pick them up at the end of the day. And I think now, sort of as we've settled in, I think for businesses, the key is to keep staff informed of it as well. There's a lot of misinformation there about JobKeeper, about who's eligible, who's not eligible, and my mate's done this and why aren't you doing this sort of thing. So, I think the critical thing was to keep staff informed over that whole period of time. And I think certainly at this other end, I think it's key as well. I've seen some pretty bad posts out there from unions and places like that who are spreading misinformation. And I think the key is just to,
I think Jason's internet's going. You're there, mate. You're back.
You're informing them of what it is, and sorry. So having that conversation with staff and just make sure you inform them.
And I think that's a great point. It's something that has frustrated me as a business advisor and accountant who kind of works with tax legislation, is that a lot of people have opinions, but it's not an educated opinion or a true understanding. They read an article or saw someone do a Facebook video and they believe they're an expert. And the thing is that you guys on the call and you guys here, you're experts in your business, but there are aspects of it that potentially you're not an expert on. You have to seek out that advice. Sammy, for you guys, you've got a few people that sit on your advisory board as well as yourself who've got a lot of experience in the hospitality industry. But then what we're going through is something you've never gone through. So how did you go about making sure that the decisions you were making were within the law and were appropriate and smart decisions, and not just something that a bloke who's got a sourdough culture and a bleached hair goes, this sounds like a great idea?
Yeah, great question. So I think the obvious first one is that, we relied heavily on those people who were experts. And so obviously Illuminate, who are incidentally our accountants, were invaluable. But like you said, I had an advisory board with people with, various different skills and points of view, and access to certain information that they were experts in. And so it was very much a matter of compiling that information that was relevant to us, double checking it and clarifying, making decisions accordingly. And to testify to what Jason said, keeping everyone who is a stakeholder privy and up to date with the information as you were getting it. So whether that was our staff and letting them know our understanding. So for us, we're in a unique situation where we weren't certain whether we would qualify for JobKeeper, not because on paper we weren't, but because of semantic, restructure we had in the business. And so we didn't know for a decent while whether or not we would or would not get it. And so we had to let our staff know that although they were exactly the same as their mate working at another cafe or at another venue, in terms of their perspective, from a business point of view, they may not be. And so it was difficult to chase down people who had the answers, because Andy, you and I had this conversation many times. Neither of us had the answers for a while. Being in the grey zone, as I think it was put earlier, is really difficult. But it was making sure that anyone who was involved knew that you were doing your best and working as quickly and efficiently as you could to try and get those answers. So I think that even still, we've got a pretty big network of wholesale customers. So Brendan and Melissa are two of them. And so we tried to update them as well with information that we were kind of becoming privy to, in particular around what they could do as a business to maybe mitigate some of the losses they were experiencing, whether it was by moving into an area of business they previously weren't doing. So I think Brendan, as you can see the sign behind his head there, doing a pop-up Greek dinners on Friday nights, which is not something they were previously doing. And so kind of helping people there, because we had customers who would even come in and question why we were open for takeaway, and accusing us of sort of, flaunting COVID laws, which of course was never an issue. It was always encouraged. And so we just needed to know, and we needed our staff to know, and we needed our customers to know and as quickly and as possibly as we could. And it was tough early on, but I think it's clearer now. And if you don't know the answers, talk to somebody who does, whether it's your accountant or whether it's a lawyer or just another hospitality person who actually has the information. Don't go to Facebook for it.
Yeah, I think something you've highlighted really importantly is having good people around you, whether they are like an accountant or a lawyer, or whether it's like an advisory board or people that you trust who understand what you're going through and have a perspective that is valuable on that. And I'm sure that everybody on this call has people like that in the world, whether it's direct family members or other people that are in paid or unpaid roles. I highly recommend it. I have that for my business as well. I want to start to shift this conversation away from what happened when we went, oh shit, we have to shut down, and how we communicated. I want to start to shift to the conversation around what's happening on Monday, because Dan Andrews has come out and said, hey, you can have 20 people in your space, provided social distancing is followed. And good old New South Wales said, no, you can have 50 because they wanted to be better or whatever. Who cares? Whatever, that's fine. Brendan, you guys have been doing pop-up nights. You've done some home delivery. You don't have a massive space, but you don't have a tiny space like Jason. What is your head going through in terms of what you're doing Monday? Have you made any definitive decisions? Are you locked in with what you're doing, or is it still a bit up in the air?
It's mostly locked in. Obviously, it's almost a reset again, which presents a whole new set of challenges. So we have to reconfigure the cafe again. And again, I think, without sounding like a broken record, it's taking that noticeable change again from the customer's point of view, and be seen to be doing the right thing. And we've gained respect from existing customers and new customers by making those changes so swiftly. We think we know what we're in for, but we don't know what a normal trade will look like. It's obviously won't be a pre-COVID trade, and it won't be a COVID trade with pure takeaway. We're acutely aware that most customers are well informed to some extent of what is happening Monday. So they'll be prepared for some change, or they'll be expecting some change. So I think we need to make the most of that initially, be it by new process, new procedure, new menu, what have you. So we've implemented a few things like that already, which we're ready to go on Monday. As for what our trade will look like, there's a bit of an unknown there. So we're not sure, say, next Friday, for example, whether we have a normal trade, which would impact our ability to run a pop-up on the Friday night during lack of prep time or space or limitations like that. So there's a bit of an unknown, but we'll get through it.
I look forward to hearing next week to how it's all gone. Mel, you guys can fit about 1 billion people in your space, provided that certain legislators allow that to happen. Now, how about you guys? So you could fit, I think, 20 in one space and potentially 20 in another space. You've got multiple different spaces you've got. Do you just run back to the same menu and away you go? Like, what have you had to think about for Monday?
No, there's been a lot to think about. So I guess one of the things that, we've spoken about in lots of different contexts is making sure that, I guess the mistakes of the past with regard to our viability and our profitability are just those. This has been a real wake-up call for us, and I think the industry in a whole, is that the way that we were kind of moving forward, the slim margins that we got were just unsustainable and left all of us sitting on a knife's edge, and some of us probably not coming through this for that reason. So we've gotten really sort of clear in our heads about wanting to make sure that the offerings that we have on the other side of this secure our business. We're not just us to be more comfortable, but for the future employment of the 45 people that work here, and the future prosperity of this business to continue doing what we do, and making the difference that we believe that we make. So in that means that there were lots of conversations around what does our menu look like. We've got I suppose, limited supplier kind of ability at the moment because of, not kind of jumping back in with everybody and not being the size and the scale that we once were. So, what does that mean with what we can get our hands on and how? And if we've got one person in the kitchen versus five, we can't offer as many things. We can't offer as much a complex menu as we once did. Like there's been so much to think about with regard to what we're doing. I guess our greatest hope is that, and what we're working toward is making sure that everything has been costed appropriately, so that when we put it out to people, that we're getting the things that we need to make this continue to be possible, that our customers feel that they're getting a great experience and they're finding value in what they're getting, and that, like, fingers crossed, all of the steps that we're taking toward ensuring not only compliance to these really extensive regulations, but all of the best practices that we normally do are going to keep everybody continually safe. And and that, that's a big weight on our shoulders, wanting to make sure that, like, we're not the guys that mess it up in some way, that we don't get somebody that comes in sick and makes other people sick. And, like, I think there's been a lot to think about. So we've done that. We've done the thinking. We're writing the policies. We've implemented some, are implementing more. We don't open again until Wednesday, so we've got a couple days to kind of get some more things in. But obviously the timelines here are similar to those timelines as we were coming out of things, which is like, okay, so today there's this announcement and it needs to be done by tomorrow. So we're kind of working on that in reverse. We actually got the detail of these restrictions on Tuesday. Today's Thursday. Like, we're kind of running around trying to make sure that we're dotting all our I's and crossing our T's.
That's good. Jace, given your role and background in accounting and those kind of things, you're the kind of guy that trolls through legislations and guidelines, and you get all giddy and happy when you see these things out. And so for those on the call, Jace spends some time with Illuminate and helps to consult with clients that we work with as well. Mate, you know these guidelines inside and out. Please do not go through them in detail. We will all fall asleep. But talk to me high level about what we should be aware of with the guidelines coming out. So what are the key things we need to be aware of in terms of how we can allow people on site, and then some maybe things we want to really make sure we have understanding how we manage that going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the key things which everyone's sort of aware of at the moment, we're restricted to 20 people in the area. You've got 4 square metres per person. An interesting one that, well, I suppose all of us weren't aware that was coming out, maximum 6 people per table. So I think Mel was saying she's got a table of 10 and has to split them. They're a family. So there's those sort of situations there. Look, I think, there's the contact tracing as well. So taking the first name and phone number of everyone. That's been an interesting journey, I suppose, over the last few weeks. I've been aware that's been coming because it came out in Queensland. So look, there's a bit of software out there at the moment. There's some software that you merely put a QR code on your menu and you can scan it in and get the information. Because in the early days, we were sitting there thinking, we're like, how do we record people's information? You give them a pen, do you have to sanitize the pen? What do you do with a piece of paper? And there's all those things that we're going through. So there's that as well. And look, and I think a key part of it is they're guiding people into, informing your customers. And I think, while some customers are going to come in and be aware of the situation, I think there's going to be a lot that aren't going to be aware. And they thinking business as usual. I mean, in our little venue, we've had it for weeks where everyone's expecting come Monday, they can come and sit down and, at max we fit 10 people inside anyway, but, people are going to expect to sit down and they're not going to understand why we're not reopening. They're not going to understand that we have to sanitize the table and the seat after everyone sits down. So therefore, if you come in and buy a $4 coffee, that the cost of me just servicing your table is more than $4. So it's just not viable. So I think that part of it's really about the education. And I think for all of us and everyone on here as well, it's really about planning out. We know the road, we know the roadmap, and for a lot of venues, this 20 will be it for a while because of social distancing. Obviously, Mel and Sam as well probably can. The next stage, they'll be able to open up a bit more. But for most cafes in Melbourne, your social distancing means 20 people's it. So it's saying, well, what are the plans? Go through them and be able to plan out for the next period of time.
Sam, viability is a couple of words Mel and Jason have kind of said, and I think it's really important in a world of hospitality where margins can be incredibly thin. If all of a sudden we have a bit of food wastage, if a power goes off in a cool room, all of a sudden our profit for a week's gone. How are you guys approaching looking at your menu, the products, and if you've got from ensuring that it is viable for you to actually open and say, well, let's have 20 people there, even though we have to, spray and wipe down every time someone's there. What are some of the things you've gone through to check those things out and make sure they add up?
Yeah, great question. Well, one thing is cash flow projections. You've got to know what you're going to be doing when you do reopen. So if you think that you can, say, seat at full capacity 20 people 3-4 times a day at a certain amount, you need to know what that looks like, and then you need to work backwards and assess whether or not you can actually do that with proper staffing, etc. I think one thing that we're really keen to do is that, ScoMo's come out and given us the lovely JobKeeper, which has probably kept a lot of us afloat. But I think that we're going to try and run our business to the same margins as we previously did, so that when JobKeeper ends, we won't be surprised or shocked at how much work we need to put in to potentially operate with, social distancing still in place, but no support from the government to make it happen, subsidy. And so I think there's a few things there. In terms of your menu and practically, I think it's really important that people, and I know Melissa's doing this, I haven't talked to Brendan about it, but that people price menus maybe a little bit stricter than they previously did. Now is not the time to offer someone a really special dish that doesn't quite fit into your ratios simply because you want a customer to have an experience. We can't afford that at the moment. Also, I think really importantly, now's not the time to, undercut your opposition. Inevitably, there will be people who probably try and do that. But I think that it's unwise because we're all going to be hurting. And I think that this is the best opportunity any hospitality business has had to actually price things correctly and have their customers actually fully support them. I know that we've had customers who've actually said to us, oh, I get that we're going to have to, have food when we come in. We can't just sit down and have coffee. And, it's a reality. Even for a space that can seat the full 20 inside, and then we have a courtyard that we can seat 20 in outside. And so I think that's probably really important. Once again, if you don't have the software or the understanding to be able to do cash flow projections or even cost the menu properly, go and find someone who can. Talk to Illuminate, talk to your accountant. And if they can't do it, then go and find a better one, So Illuminate can definitely do it. But it's too important to not get wrong, because if you get it wrong, you will go out of business this time around.
It's a great point. And you touched on JobKeeper there. It's been referred to as medication. So there's going to be a point in time where that medication's no longer being given to us. It's supposed to go until the end of September. There's been conversations around it might finish early. Maybe that's just to kind of instill a bit of hope in people, saying that business is coming back to usual. There's other people in government that want it to go for a lot longer than what it is. We realised that the government miscalculated what JobKeeper was worth. They said it was going to be $130 billion. Turns out it was only worth $70 billion at the moment. But we'll continue to see that as we go along. Brendan, I'm assuming you're in receipt of JobKeeper. No, got some JobKeeper coming through. So we can see that we have some income coming through. How do you ensure that you're not staring at that number as like, this is our ability to remain break-even / profitable, and then you're looking at the menu? Like, have you made changes with suppliers? Have you trimmed menu down? What are some of the things you've gone, we're really comfortable these decisions are going to ensure the viability of what we're doing?
Yeah, so we condensed our menu immediately back 10, 11 weeks ago. And we've formulated a new menu for next week already, also a condensed version. We've assessed pricing again, not just on the menu, but for a lot of our takeaway stuff, our grab and go items. And as far as JobKeeper, the treatment of, I guess when the first cash came in a couple of weeks ago, we just put it away from our trading account immediately. Sure, it was a reimbursement. We were fortunate enough to keep those staff that were eligible for JobKeeper. We were already employing them and giving them shifts, so that was good. And our cash flow was okay. So we certainly weren't bleeding in that we needed it there and then, and we won't be, we won't be buying it on new TVs and what have you. We're looking at using it as an investment, be it new equipment. We've had to buy new equipment to reconfigure the cafe next week. That's where that came in handy. There's some upgrades to kitchen that we need to run these pop-ups. That's where it came in handy. As for the ongoing viability, well, we don't know. JobKeeper will end, be it September or maybe earlier or later. So yes, we include it in our cash flows, but you certainly can't rely on it. And if you are, then you need to talk to those aforementioned people, Illuminate, what have you. I bounce any and every idea I have off Sam. He probably gets sick of my name coming up on his phone. But he's a great mentor for us. So I guess it's all of the above that we look at. And if you're not looking at them frequently enough, then you probably need to have a look at yourself, I think.
Yeah, and I think the JobKeeper, these payments are going for the next few months. So it's not like tomorrow you have to be profitable, irrespective of JobKeeper. I totally understand that it's going to take some time to get back into place, and there's going to be some costs of things we've never incurred, whether it's extra signage for social distancing, some training potentially that you might need to have. But there will be a point in time where you need to, and you've got a few months before you have to get to the point in time where JobKeeper is no longer there. Melf, you guys, I'm assuming there's a whole bunch of stuff you have to do. There's potential, not just costs of getting up to speed with where you're at. Potentially, you might have to pay for some advice. You might have to, signage, all these kind of things. But there's also the time that you're having to invest into figuring this out that actually doesn't generate any revenue right now. What are you looking like in terms of that timeline of going, okay, we closed our doors and now we're trading back up to something of normal? And obviously the title of this webinar was, can Hospo return to normal? It's really a question of, is there even a normal? What are you seeing the next few months coming through in terms of decisions that you guys are trying to make now that you might be capped by 20 people, or you might have to have a restricted menu, but allows you to potentially grow out to get back to something that you wanted to be when you first started this thing?
Yeah. So I guess the larger question of whether or not I think things will go back to normal, I guess for us, we don't think that they will in terms of the way we were before. And I guess that's the quantity of people, the proximity. Like, we were having a conversation today about the idea that we have big, large share tables, and that for a very long time into the future, potentially forever, people are not going to feel comfortable being seated right next to others that they don't know. And however long that restriction is in place, whether it's legal or just sort of societal.
Those share tables for you guys are one of the focal points of I remember talking to you when you first started, was this whole coming together, connecting, getting to know people more, and it's beautiful, but it's also Demolition Man says we can't do that anymore. Yeah,
it's very much inherent in what we do and part of our brand, that idea of connectedness and getting together in shared spaces. So I guess what we're looking at is we've done all the cash flow forecasting of what we think that we can do. There's still a lot unknown as to, how quickly this will move, or when and how, to what extent it'll get to that 4 meters per square meter, and that being the sort of standard, or it'll change, who knows. I guess what we're doing in lieu of that is diversifying. So we've been trying to, I guess, be more specific and purposeful around diversifying for quite a while. And for us, that looks like investing more time and energy into all of our functions, and catering. And that's been well resourced and is thriving. So we feel like that's a really good sort of, I guess, revenue stream to go along with what we're doing. And we've also been in the midst of rebrand and a launch of sauces and rubs and meat small goods. So that's kind of in fast forward at the moment, going, we need to, finalize all these things and get them out to market. So, the more we diversify and have alternate revenue streams, the more we'll secure our future. And then just being really clear on that profitability aspect. So if we're only able to have 50 people in the building or 80 people in the building, if we've got all of our margins where we need them to be, then it just means that the numbers at the end are smaller potentially, but there's a likelihood that they could be larger because we weren't doing well with them, with greater numbers. So I think there's just, a lot of conversation, still a lot unknown, but we're moving in lots of different directions.
Cool. So cash flow has been spoken, I think, almost by everybody on this call. If anyone is running a Hospo business and doesn't quite have confidence on developing cash flow, there are some great tools out there. One that we recommend is a cloud-based application called Float. It connects to your Xero file or your QuickBooks file if you run, and it allows you to sync your data and then do projections and scenario analysis where you can say, well, what if it does this, or what if it does that, and so on and so forth. Jace, one of the things that we're hearing out there is that potentially 1 in 4 hospitality venues will not make it through this year. Cash flow is a really important part of that. You work with a number of different hospitality businesses and you own them yourself. What would you be suggesting people should be looking at right now to ensure that they're in the 75% instead of the 25% that might shut?
Look, I mean, planning for Monday is absolutely critical. I think if people think they can just open the doors and let people through, they're going to be mistaken. I was reading an article today. I think in Victoria, there's been $8 million worth of fines issued, which is 2 to 3 times above what New South Wales have issued for breaches. So, you're going to get customers coming in who feel uncomfortable, and if they feel uncomfortable and they don't see that you're doing the right thing, unfortunately, there's going to be penalties. And so really it's planning out for Monday. A first customer walks in, how do you greet them? Where do they stand? How do you seat them? Do you stagger your seating? Because, if people are booking your tables and all of a sudden at 8 o'clock, you've got 20 people rocking through the door, where are they going to be standing? Who's going to be cleaning tables? Who's going to be cleaning toilets? Are you laminating your menus? How do you put salt on the table? There's all these little things. And I think it's really what you've got to do is, there's a couple of local cafes here. We've gone through the scenario. I'm walking through the door with my laptop and I want to sit down for a coffee for 15 minutes. What are you going to say? And that's a no, because, and you have to, it's sort of like, unless you have a procedure to deal with someone sitting down for 15 minutes, you've really got to be able to say no. So, so it's having all your staff educated as well, because, having that conversation with staff is critical because not every customer is going to be accepting of that. What do you mean I can't sit down? I used to do this. Why can't I do it now? I don't want to give you my details. They don't have to give the details, but you need to be able to respond in a way that you're not, it doesn't become an aggressive conversation. It's like, okay, that's fine. If you don't give details, blah, blah, you're not kicking them out. So it's looking through all those scenarios and being able to go, if you can make customers feel as comfortable as possible, you will get them back. They will support you. If half society don't feel comfortable going out, you still have half of them coming back and for a period of time, they're going to want to support and they're going to want to continue. So, cash flow is king, planning is king. That's the key, like planning for the next 6, 12, 18 months, that this is not going to change. And being happy, like if you don't need to open, if you don't need to open, if it's not viable to open, if there's an opportunity to step away, that's okay as well.
I think that's a really good point that you've made at the end there, is that as much as we might have invested a lot of ourselves into our business and we're at a certain point, we're potentially causing more grief and more harm to ourselves, to our clients, to our employees by potentially trying to push through than saying, you know what, we've had a good run, but it's just a smart idea for us to pull up stumps here and call it a day. But we also need to support each other amidst that. And the five of us jumped on a call yesterday to kind of warm up before today. And Melissa, you kind of spoke particularly around having a collective voice as an industry on the value of what it is that we do in the hospitality industry, as well as what a healthy business looks like. Do you want to go into a little bit more detail around your thoughts on that? Because I think that's really fantastic how we can be looking and supporting each other, much like we are right now.
Yeah, I love like the hat and the hoodie and like it's so beautiful. I just think that, you know, those conversations, those thoughts that we're all having, the conversations that we're having in, you know, private with fellow hospitality venues, what you were talking about, we need to be clear on what we're doing here. What Sam was mentioning regarding like, it's not the time to sort of compete against your neighbor. Like, I think that's been really awesome that, that we've seen that really thrive across this period of people, you know, doing lots of collaborations and shout outs to others and, you know, understanding that kind of, that we can collectively succeed and that, you know, the more we kind of talk about what the realities of this business are, the more we can educate consumers and our guests and, you know, bring them along with us. I think that, you know, certainly one of the things I'm concerned about is the response to these regulations and how they're being implemented in our business, and wanting to make sure that we're saying and doing the right things, but they are what they are. Hopefully everyone's okay with that. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I just want to kind of mention what you were talking about before with how do you become one of the 75%? And I think like that's a really nerve-wracking question, but I don't believe that there's a clear answer for that. Like, I know that we're certainly having conversations around like, what, you know, what money do we need to have in the bank? What money do we spend? Do we invest in this new thing that could potentially be revenue generating for us, or do we hibernate with all of that money and hide away? And I think like to some degree, like businesses is about risk, and you know, like we're all kind of making the decisions that we think are right for our business with all of the best information, and you know, where this is going to go and for how long it's going to affect our businesses, to what extent, is still really unknown. Like, I think we need to make these really cautious, informed decisions, but at the end of the day, we're spending money with the expectation that it's going to come back in some way, and like that's the best that we can do. So I don't know if that was the super positive.
No, that's fantastic. And I think like I'm going to start to wrap this up now. So guys, feel free to throw your hand up if there's something you want to add in as a closing.
Well,
yeah, go for it, mate.
I might jump in just to back off what Melissa said. I think one thing that hasn't been talked about, and hospitality owners, small business owners, are a real target for people who are maybe, I could say scammers, but all the way through to anyone looking to make a quick buck off this situation. And so I think, and Andy, you've talked about this in a number of other webinars around the risks of, say, going into too much debt or taking money from your super that you didn't need to. I guess falling prey to the promise of big financial institutions without really considering the implications of that in the future. And so I think my encouragement is to really question whether or not you do need to invest a certain amount of money into something, or whether you do need to borrow money or withdraw money from something. I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of that 25% of businesses that are potentially going under are ones that got themselves into a sticky situation they had no means of getting out from. And so that's probably one big bit of advice I have. If you don't want to be in that 25%, be very cautious about these next few months, because yeah, the sun's starting to shine again. But this is probably going to be the trickiest time, and it needs to be navigated with experience and with professionals and sound minds around you. So yeah, just because there's you know, a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow doesn't mean you should necessarily try and grab it, because it might not be for you.
Bruno, closing remarks?
Change is the only constant here. So your reaction to that change is dependent on your attitude. So come Monday, there's another change. Embrace it. Do it with a positive attitude. For a lot of our customers, this is their outlet. They're out of the house. They can catch up with their friend, have a bite to eat, coffee, a beer or something. They want to be happy. If you and your staff are happy, it's a happy and safe, clean environment that will just foster a better hospitality industry.
Bang on, mate. Absolutely. Jace, anything from you?
I mean, look, this is sort of reiterated, I suppose, our businesses are about community, and, the community around you to support you. And I think, I can say our little cafe in South Yarra has always been about that, because it's, that supports a charity as well. And, our community's always got behind us. So, for everyone on here and obviously on the call as well, it's about your local community. And so everyone around you is going to really embrace this reopening and support you. While you might have the odd person who won't, but, majority of people will come in and really want to support you. So you just need to make sure that you've got the systems and procedures in place whereby you can embrace that support.
Excellent. Guys, this has been fantastic. Just to summarize just some of the things that we've talked about as a group, and there's been some really good nuggets here. The biggest one that I'm probably taking about here is don't play in the grey. Understand the black and the white. What do you stand for? What are you doing? And make a decision, but make sure it's a smart decision, something that has a level of education and certainty around it. Get good people around you, whether that is, giving people on the call here a quick message and saying, hey, do you mind 5 seconds for a chat, or someone like your accountant, your advisor, or someone who has a knowledge in something that they can share in you that helps your business. Embrace it, as Brendan said. Like, we are in an interesting stage, and if we can embrace that and we can lead with positivity and hope, that will become infectious around that with our staff and with our community as well. Be seen. Ensure that you're being seen, as Brendan was saying as well. Don't just do stuff in the background that people don't know about. Communicate that in a way that people see what's going on, the changes you're doing, and that you're doing things as best as you possibly can. But ensure it's viable. Something that Sam mentioned yesterday that we didn't get to in the call today is we need to ensure that you're running your business on profit, not on goodwill. Particularly with, something like JobKeeper that's giving you some cash flow. And typically in the past where people might go, hold on, what? I've got to pay more than $5 for a ham and cheese toastie, when they don't even understand the cost of making that ham and cheese toastie that it costs you. Understand that you do need to be profitable. And the last nugget that I want to leave you there as well is that you are business owners and it is your business. And at the end of the day, this thing needs to benefit you. Yes, you want to make sure you're providing a great environment for your staff. You're providing something fantastic for your community. But if you're doing that at a cost to yourself that is not sustainable, it's just not worth it. And you probably should have a chat to someone around why that might be. And if you're mentally struggling as a result of that, I definitely recommend you seek out some support. If you're financially struggling, there are plenty of people out there that will be happy to. At Illuminate here, we're selling a whole bunch of merch. You can jump on our website, illuminate.com.au/shop. And all proceeds from those t-shirts and hoodies are going towards allowing us to provide free advice for people who need that. And there's been a number of people in the hospitality industry that we've been privileged to be able to help out. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks for hanging out with us. We will, just before we go, everybody, how can we find you? Melissa, how do we find you guys? You're hidden in the hills in Red Hill. Where do we go to have food with you?
87 Arthur Street Road, Red Hill. Don't just show up. Not over the next 3 weeks. Please do jump on our website, click the book now button. There's information there on getting a spot, or give us a call. You can definitely during the week. There's probably availability. I was probably too quick. Socials, Red Gum BBQ, Instagram, Facebook, we're around. We'd love to see you.
Thanks. Jace, what about you and your collective of things?
Collective of things. Well, I suppose the final steps in South Yarra. So you're up for a bit of a drive, head in there and grab a coffee. For the Willows, our new brewery is down in Mordialloc, so that should be opening. We should have a tap room opening soon, and then you get our new beers as well. And Illuminate. There you go. That's down the mountain. There you go. Yeah.
Brendo?
Down in Balnarring Village and on the socials. So we're pretty active on the socials. So
Excellent.
Get around us.
And Sam, for those who don't know about Commonfolk?
Well, if you want a bag of beans for your social isolating self, commonfolk.coffee online. Otherwise, come and visit us at 16 Progress Street in Mornington, or any cafe that fair and sustainable coffee is being served, such as Phase 2.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thanks for jumping on the call, everyone. We'll leave you to it, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Pleasure.
Andrew.
Thanks,
Bye,
Andrew.
everyone.
Thanks, Andy.
Hi, sorry. I was actually speaking on that thing.
When I heard it playing soft from a drunken bunch box, and for a moment I was lost in the bell. What I never forgot. And I